Nam, or Mother Mushroom as she's known, co-founded the Independent Vietnamese Bloggers Network in 2013. And through this, she has promoted human rights and concern for the environment, and has spoken out against the government. And dissent against single-party rule is forbidden in Vietnam. So I read Mae Nam's story and felt quite stuck by my seeming inability to affect anything through the channels that were available to me. I joined PEN. I thought the normal shtick won't cut it here. I thought playing around with language won't cut it here. I thought you can't dress it up or say something clever and in line with the current poetico-philosophico-theoretical trends when you learn that a woman is imprisoned for voicing an opinion and made an example of to frighten and silence others, when you learn that she was arrested in October 2016 and accused of voicing propaganda against the state and sentenced to 10 years imprisonment, when you learn that she was held in pre-trial detention for months without access to a lawyer until just 9 days before her trial in June last year. You don't dress it up when you learn that she's been ill-treated while imprisoned, denied access to underwear or sanitary pads, denied access to her children, when her mother is bringing up her 2 children without her. Just last month, it was reported that Mae Nam was secretly moved from Can Hia prison in her home province in the south central coast to what is known as Camp Number 5 in northern Tan Hoa, nearly 1,000 kilometres from her hometown. And this prison is known to have deplorable conditions of detention. The authorities didn't inform her mother and her children until after they had gone to the place where she was held before, as a deliberate punitive measure. Mae Nam is reported to be in poor health because she has not had access to the medication that she needs. To say something further about these bald facts, to say something theoretical or poetic, or a mix of the two, felt at that point to me impossible. I felt the need for someone with a voice more weighty and more relevant than mine, someone with direct experience of living in that country. So I turned to Trinh T. Minh Ha, Vietnamese filmmaker, writer, literary theorist, composer and professor. Minh Ha's feminist voice is particularly relevant and inspiring today, which is International Women's Day. Working in the space between poetic and political expression, Minh Ha uses the figure of the moon to talk about politics and ideology in her book, When the Moon Waxes Red. And in the early 90s, when that book came out, she says the following. She says, "Politics waxes and wanes like a lunar eclipse. It vanishes only to return, rejuvenating itself as it reaches its full intensity. To the function of any ideology and power is to represent the world positively unified. To challenge the regimes of representation that govern a society is to conceive of how a politics can transform reality rather than merely ideologize it." So here she is pointing out the potential for language to transform reality. And Mae Nam was trying to do that very thing through her blog, and she was imprisoned and made an example of for doing so. Minh Ha, again, says around the same time, "Theorists need to react strongly, or tend to react strongly against poetry today, because for them, poetry is nothing else but a place where subjectivity is constituted and where language is aestheticized, such as building vocabulary and rhyming beautiful lines. Whereas poetry is also the place from which many people of colour voice their struggle. As feminists have insistently pointed out, women are not only oppressed economically, but also culturally and politically, in the very forms of signifying and reasoning. Language is therefore an extremely important site of struggle." So, thinking about the situation with Mae Nam and feeling frustrated at not being able to do more concretely, I remembered through reading Minh Ha's words the importance of remembering the concreteness of words, the words we use to affect things. So I thought about bringing things into being through the concrete and cement and pebbles and bricks and stones that make up language. Stories matter, poems matter, And when we hear the squeak of hysteria when the politicians are being interviewed on the radio, we feel apocalyptic in our times when those who think they are the cleverest are not the cleverest, the best lack all conviction, the worst are full of passionate intensity, and it becomes too common to quote those lines from W.B. Yeats' uber-apocalyptic poem, The Second Coming, these days. Those who think they are the best wear a shroud of falsehood that will kill us all, while firebrands who bow to dog-eat-dog logic don't seem so different, and yet all these incendiary metaphors work both ways. So knowing that it's International Women's Day, thinking about concreteness and cement and change, and inspired by and dedicated to Mainam, I put some of the smallest bits together in a kind of enticement or an invocation, or maybe a full-blown spell, with bits of words, morphological fragments as the ingredients. To think about how, in the words of J.L. Austin in the 1960s, how to do things with words. This is just a brief excerpt from something I wrote, which is called a prefix femifesta. Change is not just a thing we want, change is a doing. Grammar is not just a thing we learn. Bits of words make our world. We can change imperatives to infinitives. To change infinitives to happenings, only happenings are not just things, they are a doing too. Changing bits of words to change the world. Rewriting to make things new. Taking on old forms in order to change and make them new. Taking on a manifesto and feminizing it. A manifesto is already a prefixing, a movement is already a prefixing. Language is not a thing but a force to be challenged, channeled, changed. Changing the order, changing the syntax, changing the shapes and changing the axes, reversing the hierarchy, working in the past, present, future simultaneously, sticking bits of words together to make new ones, being irreverent, being contrary, playing in order to be serious, using nonsense to make sense, prefixing the systems you live in. Be, contra, para, poly, pre, re, qui, in, inter, de, pro, mat, s, ex, dis. Be the be of becoming, before, between. Be contra, be contradictory, be contrary. Be para, be a paradox, be a para-academic. Be polyvocal, polyglottal, polysemic, polychromatize the pre of precede, preempt, prefix the re of revolve, reorder, rewrite, recycle, refuse, reuse the qui of queering and querying and questioning. Make imperfection, stage interventions. Use trans reason and transversal thinking to transform the D of deconstruct, defamiliarize processes of love in materializing, maternalizing and mattering, love in order to estrange, love in order to express, disidentify and disobey.
Let's introduce reading next Adam Barron for Yandanda and then God.